This is actually one of the most historic spots in the state. Not only was this a center of both Union and Confederate activity during the Civil War. Courthouse used to be in the middle, was burned during the war. The Federals came here, Lyons Group came here from Springfield, or from St. Louis, and from the north occupied the town square. After the Battle of Wilson's Creek, the Confederates took over. The Union drove them out. Then in January 1862, this place was under Union control for the rest of the war and was a depot for operations in southwest Missouri and northwest Arkansas during the war. In addition to that, there was a lynching in the town square in the 20th century and a major riot. And there's the plaque over there. Look at that in a minute and see about the lynchings. I've seen pictures of it, and it's pretty gruesome. So this is really a very, very historic spot. It's also a very historic spot because the Fox Theater over there, my dad, on the night before his last finals, needed to unstress, so he went to the theater there to see the Russians are coming. So he could pass his finals and get a job and support me because I was a baby.
Wow. Russians are coming, I remember that one.
Where's the plaque for that?
It's not up there yet.
Well, we also passed the Doug Gifford Memorial Birthplace site on the way in.
Future site.
Yeah, future. They don't have a plaque yet, but it's coming, I'm sure.
Okay, so Battle of Springfield. After the Confederates are kicked out of here in January 1862, this becomes a major depot, supply depot for all of southwest Missouri and northwest Arkansas in the Indian territories, this whole area. Because Springfield has several thousand people, by far the biggest city in this part of the world. So this is a very important place. The Confederates are having a hard time getting traction in northwest Arkansas, launching any kind of offensive. So in order to disrupt what's going on up here, supplying all these troops that are fighting them in Arkansas, the Confederates launch a raid led by John Marmaduke into southwest Missouri to break up the Union supply lines going into Arkansas. Marmaduke, whose picture is right here on this second, or this plaque on the left, Marmaduke comes up, he attacks small Union garrisons in the southwest part of the state, and then he hears from his spies that Springfield is not very well defended and that he can maybe capture Springfield and completely disrupt Union supply operations. If that happens, if Springfield is taken and the depot here is destroyed, there is no way to get supplies to the several thousand troops in northwest Arkansas and southwest Missouri. So he decides he's going to attack here, and he makes his way here. He gets to about the town of Ozark, about 15 miles south of here, and the Union discovers that he's on his way. The commander, General Egbert Brown, whose picture is over there, is the commander here. So General Brown has to decide what are you going to do. Are you going to evacuate the town? Are you going to burn all the supplies and just leave? Well, that's as good as Marmaduke winning. It's just as good as Marmaduke capturing the town. So, or is he going to stay and fight? Well, he only has about 1,500 soldiers here in Springfield, not a large force. But he decides he's going to go ahead and fight. And he organizes his own troops. He calls up the enrolled Missouri Militia. He gets about 400 of them to mobilize and join his force. And he goes, this is Springfield, like most towns, garrison towns, Springfield is a large hospital. All the sick and wounded from this part of the state, from this part of the world, have come to Springfield to be in the hospitals here. So General Brown sends his troops, or his people, to go into the hospital to find guys who can walk and are physically capable of firing a weapon. That's it. That's all you have to do. So he gets about 400 of those troops, and he calls them the Quinine Brigade, because quinine is a medicine that they frequently give sick people in the Civil War era, invented by Dr. Sappington. Actually, this dude's a grandfather or great-grandfather. Dr. Sappington is the one that invented the quinine tablet, and saved thousands of lives from malaria on settlers on the frontier. So he gets these guys, forms them into the quinine brigade, about 400 of those, and they're going to fight together. And so that gives him about 2,300 soldiers to face. He's told he's going to be facing like maybe 3,000 Confederates. So in theory, the odds are going to be pretty even to start. Springfield is surrounded by a series of forts. It's not going to be a linear battle like you think of. It's going to be mostly the Confederates attacking these strong points, which helps if you have fewer soldiers and some of them are not physically able to be moving around in a typical battle. If you can fight behind fortifications, that gives you an advantage. So there's a map over there that shows you the various forts. And then the Confederates are coming from the southwest. And the southwest fort is called Fort Number 4. And we'll go to the site of Fort Number 4, and we'll see. You can see how, as we drive along here, it's really a very small, just really a few block area where all this fighting takes place, because there's not a ton of troops, and the Federals are in fixed areas. So we will. You guys can read the signs, and we will go to the various spots where various things take place during the battle.
Cool.
So that was the Methodist Church at the time of the battle. And for some reason, the reason is because it's a bigger than average building, and it's kind of not a public building, but it's more of a public building than a house. The Union Army took over that building and made it the armory. So ammunition and weapons were stored in that building. When General Brown called up the enrolled Missouri Militia and the quinine brigade, who didn't have the guns were taken from them, they had to report to the Methodist Church, and they were issued weapons and ammunition out of that building. They didn't have full accoutrements, ammunition pouches and stuff, so they basically were handing out handfuls of ammunition to these guys to put in their pockets. And so as much as they could carry in their pockets, they were issued and sent out to the front lines. Down here, we're going to talk about in just a second. And there was some fighting over here in this area. We'll go kind of over there. So they didn't have to go too far, but they still had to carry their ammunition in their hands or in their pockets to get to where they needed to be. You know, of course, we talked about dropped bullets yesterday, delineating where there are lines on the battlefield. If you had come out here after this battle, you would have seen a lot of dropped bullets because they didn't really have anywhere to secure their ammunition. I'm going to walk down here to the Fort Number 4, since we're parked kind of in between.
They didn't have ammo pouches.
No, the regular soldiers had ammo, had cartridge boxes where they could hold 40 rounds. But these guys, like the enrolled Missouri Militia, they didn't have anything. In fact, they didn't have uniforms. They just showed up in civilian clothes. And those injured soldiers, they had all that stuff taken away from them. So they just stuffed the ammunition in their pockets and moved on out. So if you saw that map of the outer defenses of Springfield, Fort Number 4 is located right across there, right across the street in this parking lot area. And that's kind of the plan of the fort there. So when the Confederates are attacking from the south and southwest, this becomes the pivotal point of the battle. They attacked this fort a number of times, but they're not ever able to capture it. It has a couple pieces of artillery in it, and it is really the center of gravity. It is the most important part on the Battle of Springfield battlefield for the Union. The Confederates are simply not ever able to capture this fort. And over here in a minute, we'll look at a couple of places where there is ground fighting, but being able to hold these strong points, rather than having troops on the ground, they're able to hide their non-veteran troops and give them confidence to fight behind fortifications, and they're able to make up for their lack of numbers by fighting inside fortifications. Like you guys went to Pilot Knob, you can see that 1,500 soldiers could hold off 5,000 soldiers inside fortifications because they're much more well protected. If you guys want to read the sign or look at it real quick, we'll take off to the next spot. Oh, actually, I'm going to skip a stop. I could combine a stop here too. When the Confederates, when the direction that they were going to traveling became clear that they're coming from the south, the morning of the battle, General Brown ordered 10 houses here along South Street, south of the fort, burned to increase the field of fire. So those houses provided cover and concealment to the Confederates attacking, so he ordered them burned. 10 houses along the street. So war was a nasty business, but he did what he thought he needed to do to be able to defeat the Confederates. Meaning German, and is a derogatory term in the state the Southerners used for us good old Germans, German immigrants. So this was a predominantly German area. There was a brick building here, not this brick building, which was one of the early colleges, the Confederates captured that. So the Confederates captured that. They kind of used it as a base to launch attacks in this direction, which just came against the Federals. Also in this area, the Union had artillery here, and they were firing 6-pounder guns. We saw some 6-pounder guns yesterday. They were even outdated by the time of the Civil War, but they were taking the Confederates under fire here. And also what occurred here was one of the most interesting events of the day. A Union captain and a Confederate major rode their horses between the lines and engaged in a brief, mostly indecisive, old-fashioned saber duel right out in this area. If they'd have just said they could have just fought to the death and the winner decided the battle, but they didn't. So this area here, and then the next area where we're going to, saw some of the most intensive fighting during the battle. The troops that Brown's, the troops from his garrison fought in this area here, outside the fort, where the heaviest fighting was.
They're probably the best troops that he had.
Yeah. They were actually regular. They were not sick. They were not militia.
Yeah.
They were his regular troops. He had a cavalry regiment and an infantry regiment, about 1,500 folks. So and we'll go to the next place, and those two places were the points of the heaviest fighting. But you can see it's not too far from the square. It's not like Wilson's Creek where you drive you're covering a couple of miles. This is a much smaller engagement. And also remember that even though these buildings weren't here, this was still an urban environment. So there's house-to-house fighting and civilians on the battlefield, which is always a problem during warfare. So not exactly the same, but still the same kind of environment.
And it just lasted a day.
Yeah, it lasted just a few hours. Yep. All right, we'll move on to the next. Not far from the square is where General Brown stationed the 72nd Enrolled Missouri Militia that he called up, about 400 of them to fight the battle. And they did a pretty good job considering they were just militia, really just civilians, not trained. They had no uniforms, no accoutrements, just basically weapon and ammunition. And they spread out in this area, and this area did not have the heaviest fighting of the battle. Heavy fighting was really more that way, but still they held their own against Marmaduke veterans for a couple hours during the afternoon and kept the Confederates from getting past them. These were some of the troops that were outside of the strong points. And one thing you can if you look on there, there are other strong points. Fort number 1, kind of up at the, let's see if it does have Fort number 1 on there. Okay, Fort number 1 was the biggest fort and had a lot of people in it. So some of Brown's garrison was in that other fort, anticipating an attack from that area. So he wasn't really able to use all of his troops. So I thought this was the witness building to Route 66, but it is not. Route 66 went a little farther to the north. No, actually, it didn't even go through the square. It went north of the square on Chestnut Expressway, which is kind of a throughway through Springfield. However, Mount Vernon Street, I was telling Greg, Mount Vernon Street was the route of the Telegraph Road. So Lyon's troops going through here would have gone by here on this road. Telegraph Road, of course, was the road from St. Louis to Fort Smith, Arkansas. It was the route of the Butterfield, Overland Stage, Overland Mail. It started about 2 or 3 years before the Civil War, and Mr. Butterfield improved the road, graded it, made it nice so wagons, so teams could go through there with not just wagons, but also with stagecoaches and mail coaches. So it came through Springfield. Let me slow down. It came down through Boonville to the square, and then on the northeast corner of the square, we looked at that brick building. That's the location of their headquarters, not the actual building, but the location. And then it came outside the south of the square, came down South Street just a little bit, turned right on Mount Vernon, and ended up where we were yesterday, walking it on the battlefield yesterday.
Goes through Pea Ridge.
Went through Pea Ridge, yep, past Elkhorn Tavern, all the way down to Fort Smith, Arkansas.
How many
I think it went beyond that too.
Oh yeah. How many people live in this road know that this was the wire road?
Probably none.
Yeah.
Probably none care.
They're all college students. Of course they know it.
Yeah, they probably, because they know everything.
Once again, the Confederates attacking in this direction. The square is just over there, maybe 400 or 500 yards. The Confederates in this area make one final push toward the square. They're defeated and driven back, and Marmaduke chooses to retreat. This area here, earlier in the day, marks the farthest advance of the Confederate forces during the battle. So you can see they get about just 400, 500, 600 yards from the square before they're driven back. But as Suzanne was just pointing out, this is not just a small, tiny area defending the town square. This is a larger perimeter defense, so which makes it much easier to defend because they're defending all these strong points instead of trying to defend one tiny area in the middle of town. So the Confederates even if the Confederates break through here, I don't know what their aim is, except for to try to destroy capture or destroy the Union ammunition stored here. But I don't think even if they break through, I don't know how successful it is, because he's got a defense. General Brown has a defense in depth. So a breakthrough at one area is not necessarily going to lose the battle for the Federals. But this is as close as they got. I was talking about earlier how the Confederates actually are outnumbered here. So they never really got extremely close. They never broke any of the Union lines. They never captured any of the Union fortifications. But this is as close as they got right here.
These forts that they had around town, what were they made? I mean, what kind of, they were
They were earthen beams, arms, yeah. Yeah, they would be in a square shape. A lot of times they would have protruding parts to create fields of fire up and down the sides of the fort. And they would have gun emplacements, so they would have artillery pieces in there as well.
They weren't brick and mortar.
Oh, no. Brick and mortar was obsolete by the time of the Civil War. Even though, like, coastal forts were still made out of masonry, they had been built earlier. But the Civil War proved that rifled artillery pieces, modern rifled artillery pieces, could destroy masonry forts. So
what happens to the Confederates? They just kind of fiddle faddle back down to Arkansas, I guess?
Yep, once Marmaduke is finished here, he takes his troops and he retreats back to Arkansas. He gathers them all up, and they retreat back to Arkansas. And he files a report that's probably more glowing than the actual results should indicate. But basically, they failed to break the Union supply routes into northwest Arkansas. They failed to capture this depot. So things just went on, other than the number of casualties they inflicted here. And there was also a battle. Marmaduke's troops at a town called Hartville, which is northeast of here, like between Mansfield and Marshfield. That was part of this. And the Confederates really achieved no goal other than scaring a few people and causing casualties. They really don't achieve anything by this raid.
But then later they think, well, if it was a brigade-sized raid and we did this, a bigger raid must get us better results. And it didn't.
Which led to Shelby's raid, which you talked about.
And then Price in, 1864?
Yeah. Price raid was a whole other, I don't even call it a raid, it's an expedition, because it's a big expedition. Big expedition with different goals, but still.
I think it's just a raid on a massive scale. So we probably can't be friends anymore now.
All right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
So this is the second time I've heard you talk about Marmaduke filing a report that maybe inflated its success a little bit. Did you find that to be pretty consistent?
Oh yeah, all soldiers did that.
Okay, so it wasn't just
did you ever get a report or a -1 or something with this
but I mean
total nonsense?
It's like sales reports.
Yeah.
Sales call reports.
Yeah. I just thought maybe it made him a natural fit to be Missouri's governor. Because he became Missouri's governor.
Yeah. Yep.
This will be our last. This is our last stop.